So the format I'll talk about for say 30 to 40 minutes, and then the balance 15, 20 minutes will keep a Q&A. Well, so the first wave when hit us, I think sometime Feb, March 2020, we knew very little about the virus, how bad this could be. We weren't sure. It was unprecedented, unusual, much more severe. I think we couldn't even compare this to demonetization or 2008, 2009 financial crisis, or not even of the war. We've never been here before. If you recollect, the half the world was quarantined. Lockdown had stopped global trade, significant capital outflow from developing economies. FDI, M&A halted, and the credit to GDP ratio was estimated to be peaked. There was a massive churning underway in the bond market. Remittances started falling down. I think if I recollect, within the month of infection, we had seen the collapse of trade volumes. There's a significant fall in commodity prices. Borders were closed within the countries, even today for that matter. Migrants couldn't return, if you recollect, last year. And insurance companies are flooded with claims. I'm sure even today, the insurance companies are flooded with claims. And please note, all this is happening together. And this was happening everywhere. And the world was not experienced, or is not experienced to handle this. Hence, this is called unprecedented. And the fact is, we are not immune. In the last year when the COVID hit us, the impact was real, and this was bad. And we estimated that international trade is meant to take time and to recover. We had witnessed loss of jobs, livelihoods, collapse of investments. All this meant was a low demand, which means lower income, who supplied those goods and services, which in return it means less consumption. The point is, it will take time to recover. Basically, it is a negative multiplier effect. So there's one topic that we often talk about is the MSMEs, the medium and small enterprises, which were already falling off the cliff. So the MSMEs is one subject that I think we should discuss about. Irrespective of the lockdown, the statutory obligations are to be met, whether your rental, your salaries, the power, the other admin expenses. They forget income. I think today sustaining the business are the biggest challenge. We have witnessed there is a broken supply chain. So we have seen the broken supply chain. Factories are closing, and the disruption led to an immediate spike in the unemployment. The data says India, 80% of exports comes from MSMEs, and they contribute 40% of the GDP. Apparently, the access to US and Europe is now limited. So imagine the severity of impact to MSMEs are today facing. Now, to fight this pandemic, countries had come out with large stimulus package. These are large public spending, as much as 5% to 15% of GDP. And monetary policy just infusing liquidity on a scale we never witnessed. And this is huge. This was an uncharted territory for the central banks. They were puzzled how to deal with lives versus livelihood. Even in India, RBI responded, shouldered with greater responsibility, infusing liquidity. We have seen that LTRO, TRTO, increasing refinancing limits to housing finance companies, agriculture, MSME. There was a special open market operations, and there's backstop for mutual funds. This is countless. There's one, the supply chain I really want to touch upon, which is really important subject. If you recollect, we noticed this when China was affected, early last year. Like in India, we import bulk of drug raw materials, about 80% from China. Soon after the breakdown in China, Wuhan, the pharmaceutical supply was impacted. This is just one. There are many other commodities across the world affected by global supply chain. In a way, social distancing had prevented economic activity around the globe. And in the medium term, we may see, this can push, we anticipated this will push the inflation due to currency depreciation, and there could be a shortage of commodities because of the lack of efficient supply chain. this is basically a cost push inflation, eventually may lead to an increase in the interest cost globally. Well, developing economies are largely formed by informal workers. I think in India, 90% of our workforce is informal and they are less protected. I particularly not a fan of basic income. I mean, the direct benefit transfer, DBT, what we call it. I rather prefer an employment over a basic income. But today, given the scenario, providing basic income is inevitable so that they can survive, live, and shore up the demand. Now, what COVID-19 can do to employers, you and I, we are the employees of a particular organization. The firm, the corporates, for them, this dramatically increases the risk and the uncertainties, and they are less willing to take any fixed cost, including cost of workers, unless there is certainty of income. I mean, therefore, even possible that formal employees will or may be less protected in the future. Now, post first wave, what happened? Uh, There's one subject that we often discuss, debate on the Sensex paradox, a rising market and the falling growth. And there's always a subject of discussion about market inefficiency. We have seen, despite the claims of recovery, even post first wave, uh, the job losses mounted. The pay cuts in most of the organizations are not even today revised yet. The pandemic has taught us the future of work will remain extremely uncertain. A few companies are showing record profits by cutting costs, laying off people rather than investing. As a result, if you have read the Economic Times in last 6 months, the buyback of shares of these companies have increased because they are not investing. They are now trying to buy back those shares from the market. I think pre-second wave, we have seen the demand for, automobiles and particularly cars have gone up significantly. Power consumption has increased, but restaurants, hotels, transportation, civil aviation are still hurting. Mobility was low. There was a report from McKinsey, and I wish to quote on the future of work. And the report says the remote work and virtual meetings are likely to continue, albeit less intensity than the pandemic peak. In fact, there was a survey done, I think about close to 300 executives from the global Fortune 500 companies. On an average, all of them say they are planning to reduce office space by 30%. I mean, 30% of the office space, imagine the kind of impact this can have it across the country, in particularly the real estate business. I mean, this not only for real estate, this will have a cascading effect. I mean, this means demand for restaurants, retail, public transportation, business travel. This will tend to decline. But on the contrary, the leisure travel, will likely to increase. Now we are used to, there is a shift to digital transaction. Hence, the share of e-commerce companies have grown up. Few call this as a K-shaped recovery. I mean, good for some companies, some sectors, and not so good for others. I particularly do not subscribe to, an alphabetical recovery phase. If this was a K-shaped recovery now, for example, if there's a waiter who is working in a restaurant, he is now jobless today, and his ability to spend on the other needs will be impacted. The point is, the sectors which are performing well today, which are claimed to be performing well today, will feel the pinch some point in future because there's a fall in income level, for the larger section of the society. And some of the positivity that we witnessed, the green shot that we've seen, I think some September 2020 till Feb 2021, I think real estate was a classic example. We witnessed record sales in most of the residential projects. Most of the developers have done phenomenally well. Even when you look at the bank data, applications for home loans were increasing over like 30-40% year on year or respective months. This was backed up with low interest rates, property prices were softer, states concessions on property tax, fiscal incentive for home loans, and also this was a lot of positive sentiments were improved. I mean, look at GST collections were very promising, e-way bill, tractor sales were good, auto sales are phenomenal, power consumption has increased, fuels, return of migrant workers. I think there was a lot of positivity we witnessed. I think especially after first wave and before the second wave hit us. But we have to equally acknowledge the fact that most of us have lost the spending power. Now, whether it was a pent-up demand or it was a sustainable demand, that is a subject of discussion. But my view was it is important to one can see stabilization in the demand once the pent up demand is over. And that is the true demand we should be looking at, whether it is real estate or non-real estate for that matter. So the key is to look beyond the rebound. It is less rosy. I mean, sustainable level demand after incentives go away. So once every incentive, every policy comes with a sunset clause. So once they withdraw this, your tax concessions or the other benefits the government is offering to respective sectors, whether the demand will sustain or no, I think that is what we should be looking at. So, but equally, we have a lot of small firms, like I mentioned earlier, now today are unable to survive. And jobs have disappeared. As a result, a few sectors will perform well at the expense of small and medium firms and informal sector. In fact, I was discussing with one of my, client who runs SME manufacturing firms in Pina, Bangalore. He was giving me a data. I think pre-COVID, they had a workforce of almost 1.5 million. Now, after the first COVID hit them, it has dropped below 5 lakh workforce because the farms were not able to accommodate the cost, the fixed cost, and sustainability became so extremely challenging. The market fell off, and servicing those financial obligations was such that they were not able to withstand the overall the business sentiment. So the point is, uh, as a result, like I said, few sectors will perform well at the expense of small and medium and informal sector. But on the longer run, it is a bad news. Now, what is missing in action? I think even this is pre-COVID, we had this issue. The long time issue was a private investment. And the question is, how do you unleash the animal spirit? Business want medium certainty. I mean, they want light regulations, or at least regulations are not changed for the convenience. If one keeps changing the game of rules, it changes the basis of competition. Even for that matter, real estate. I mean, today business operates under a very thin margin. We know the input cost has gone up, but the selling price of these residential units have been capped. You know, you can't sell it beyond this level in a micro market. But however, your input cost has gone up. Hence, your margins have come down really low. Now, but one change in the input tariff will disrupt the business continuity. I recall meeting with one of my clients, and he uses a word called corporate immunology. What he meant was factors which are visible, like competition, market share, price war, product innovation. We are prepared to respond, and we are willing to face these, visible factors, and also invisible factors like Lehman crisis, IL&FS, and possibly COVID to an extent, where they are completely unprepared for. But the vaccine for all these crises lies in corporates, for the corporates in government policies. I think that determines how the economy and the sport business can function in the overall system. Well, in my view, every crisis will give rise to new age forms, uh, but at the expense of weaker ones. It is a zero-sum game. We aren't increasing the pie. Business at some point reaches oligopolistic stage. Even real estate is a classic example where we are now witnessing the consolidation happening both on the buy side and the sell side. Now, the larger developers are consolidating with the smaller ones, where the ability to sustain those businesses has been a challenge. They have now been circled with issues with financial creditors, operational creditors within the company, landowners. So there are various issues. They are unable to come out. Hence, the banks at some point of a time is forced to monetize these projects or land at a discounted price. And the developer who's got D capital in the market, who's they're willing to pick it up, and they will consolidate going forward. Even on the buy side, even the financial institutions, also we have seen the consolidation is happening at a significant scale. So the point is, there is this once you will see at some point in future, the large few developer in real estate or any other sector for that matter, where the capital, intensive sectors like your telecom, aviation, we have seen large operators will dominate and start influencing the policy. Hence, it is called oligopolistic stage. So this will lead to inequality. The deficiency in the Indian economy are deep-seated. Classic example is land acquisition. I mean, I don't have to tell you how difficult is this, for land acquisition. Even for infrastructure project, a company estimates a timeline of X, but actually in reality it takes 10x of that timeline. So there are deep-seated issues in the economy which needs to be addressed. The solution must be subjective and scientific in nature. Well, the point is, can the government expand on the resource envelope? The debate is economic growth versus provide a safety net to business and people. Now, the question is whether do we know the true level of scarring in the economy? I recall reading this report from RBI in February 2021, the report came out, which said the gross NPAs, the non-performing assets, were down to 7.5% in September 2020 from 8.5% in March 2020. I mean, this is telling you something really weird going on. NPAs are falling when the Indian economy is witnessing the worst crisis in the history. So I know the RBI equally acknowledges the NPAs will tend to rise to like 13-14% in near future. The question is, are we letting the stock market euphoria to mask real business, real issues businesses and people are facing today? I mean, look, I'm super bullish on the Indian economy in the longer run, but hiding from fundamental issues and clapping the government for whatever it is, I think it is not a right approach. I think we need to create an euphoria to attract investors, encourage private investments, and give confidence to people. Now, what is a must do is government to increase its spending, increase its envelope resource, and protect the economically weaker section today. I mean, you can also consider distributing cash to economically weaker section. Look at non-farm sector in the rural area like carpenter, barber, loaders, unloaders. Their incomes will fall. Many are pushed to poverty today. Unless there is a cash transfer or direct benefit transfer, pain will certainly magnify. I think the Tamil Nadu government recently has begun transferring, I think, about 4,000 rupee per ration card, and poor household, even government has come out is now supporting the poor household with free grain. Perhaps, in my view, we should have done more. Now, the major worry is, for the economy or the bank is the debt burden pile up for SMEs, small and medium enterprises, and the households. Now, the question is that the ability to repay this debt is a concern. Equally, the banks, new commercial credit, the wholesale lending is subject of concern. The food and beverage, restaurants, tourism, hospitality, civil aviation, like I said, are the most impacted sectors. I personally, since I'm into corporate finance, I meet a lot of bankers, and every time I take a proposal, the bankers, the way they carry due diligence, unlike before, I think the dynamics have gone through a significant change. They are critically assessing each opportunity before considering for a commercial credit for any new opportunity. For example, our LRDs, lease rental discounts and offers, we have seen this. I'm in touch with most of the lenders in the market. Whenever I take this LRD proposals, a new LRD proposal to bankers, there is a skepticism. Point number one, the construction finance at the land stage for the offers, particularly without having some form of LOI, letter of intent, interest from the prospective tenants, they find this very speculative in nature. Hence, they decline. And even pre-leased rentals, pre-leased assets, while considering for an LRD opportunity, the subject of discussion is whether these tenants will continue to occupy these spaces, time, or whether they'll start engaging on the price negotiation in some future, because the work from home has become a new normal. So there is a skepticism for bank in creation of the commercial credit in the market. Remember, the commercial credit is the key, which helps the economy to function. It's called M3 in finance. We call this M3. What does it mean? Once money starts exchanging from one hand to another, that's when you see the economy starts flourishing. If I stop spending, now I've got some X amount of income, now I will not spend. Now, if I don't spend, how do you expect the money getting transferred from one hand to another? Hence, the stagnation of economic growth starts taking place. We know for sure today the banks are flushed with liquidity, but equally they are unable to find a credible investment opportunity in the market. The fear of turning non-performing assets at some point in future by these bankers. Now, like I said, the MSMEs are the real victims of the current crisis. I was reading this article in the UK. The government is paying wages on behalf of these employees. Equally, we can also consider this possible that this may widen the fiscal deficit for India and impact our international sovereign rating. But I think the government can explain this to rating firms and get them into confidence and ensure that fiscal house to get an order eventually. That is a key I think the government should look at. And number two, I think the bank encourage bank credit, with so much of liquidity around, create an auto system to ensure borrowers are forced to follow a set of financial discipline and have the transparency and put India back on track. India today's credit to GDP ratio is at 50%, is the lowest among the global peers. I mean, look at countries like China, South Korea, even Vietnam's latest development is as a result of private debt. But India's credit to GDP ratio is far too low compared to any other country. Hence, creation of this commercial credit is of significant importance. Unless the money supply happens, the economy, it's unlikely to take off the ground anytime soon. Now, on the other side, I think the government should also consider, in my view, rolling back some of its indirect taxes and provide a safety net to people. I mean, look, this is a paradox for me, and I always discuss this with most of my friends. Well, one side you want the economy to pick up, but on the other side you are slapping it with more and more taxes. So, well, I mean, let's hope that we'll not witness the third wave in the coming days. And the last, I would like to end my talk saying that there is no denying that there is an evil in the world, but the light will always conquer the darkness. Thank you so much. I think I end my talk with that. If there is any questions that you have that I would like to take, I can answer it. Nandan, over to you.
Thanks, Charu. Thanks for such a good topic and session you took today. It was quite informative and giving out the real-time facts and figures and making us aware of what is happening in the current situation. So, guys, if you have any questions, please.
Hi, Charu, Ashwin here. Quick one. Yeah. So, I mean, do you think some of this the skepticism on the part of lenders, especially today, is also got to do with the fact that just before COVID hit, you also had this big banking whammy of guys like Yes Bank and ILFS sort of going belly up, and therefore financial institutions anyway sort of becoming cautious, and then sort of COVID kind of ramping that whole sense of caution, just dialing it up that much more.
I'll share this with one example. I recall meeting the former CEA, Chief Economic Advisor, Dr. Arvind Subramaniaswamy. He was in Bangalore at Bangalore International Center. This was I think early 2020. He was here for his book launch of the council, Modi Jetli Economy. So if you recall, we were just out of ILFS default. The NBFC, the shadow banking was such. There was a fear that there was a cascading effect. Now, what is the NBFC model? The NBFC model was they borrow money from the banks and they lend to real estate sector. Now, the money is primarily short term in nature, which is a 3 months to 6 months tenure of loans, and they end up lending to the real estate project which had a longest. I mean, the tenure of these projects are 3 to 5 years. So there was an asset liability mismatch. Now the issue came up when the ILS defaulted. Everyone started alerting and went back to these NBFCs, including banks, mutual funds, and some of the NCDs which were structured, demanding for repayment. Now, most of the NBFCs were unable to repay on time because equally the borrowers will take time to repay.
Yeah.
So there was an asset liability mismatch. The NBFC stopped lending at that point of a time. Now, in this course of it, what happened? There is a real estate project. The NBFC has given 100 crore. This is a live example. There's an NBFC has given a loan sanction of up to 100 crore, and they have disbursed up to 50 crore to the project. Now this ILFS default happened. The institutions came and demanded these NBFC to repay the debt. These are short term in nature. Obviously, they are obligated to repay. But the NBFC were unable to repay at that point of a time. They had some surplus. They used that money and repaid. But on the contrary, now what happened to the project where they're given a 100 crore sanction? Now they're 50 crore dispersed, but the balance 50 crore needs to be dispersed to ensure the financial closure of the project happens. And now they were unable to disperse it. Now what happened? Your project is stalled. The moment this project is stalled, your sales velocity is curtailed. So the moment sales velocity is curtailed, the ability of these developers to service the interest obligation will be a subject of discourse. Now this whole of China, everyone got, and then the bank start noticing it. They started very cautious call whether should we consider lending like the way we used to do it. I'll give you another example. I was running one of the transaction for triple B plus developer in Bangalore. Of course, I can't name the credentials of the transaction, but just to give you a macro view on this thing, I took this to one of the large public sector bank. We spent about, I think, 6 to 7 months in the transaction. We carried all the due diligence. We did the financial due diligence. We got the technical feasibility study. We got the economical viability report done. We got the title diligence done. We got the external rating done. We got the internal rating done. Project rating done. I mean, every possible due diligence we satisfied, and the bank had agreed to sanction. This was supposed to happen when in the month of March last week 2020. Okay. Now the last week of March 2020, we were supposed to have the sanction in place. The lockdown announced. Obviously, the discussion the committee meeting was pushed for an indefinite time for a future. Now, what happens after this? When the lockdown was lifted, I met the banker to reassess the project. Now, the banker said, look, we'll have to change the business plan and incorporate the COVID impact. I said, how do we do it? Point number one, we'll have to increase the loan quantum of the project. Point number two, we'll have to increase the equity contribution. Point number three, let's make a resilient business plan, keep the sales as low as possible for initial 1-2 year. We'll pent up the sales over a period of end of the project tenure, so that the financial closure of the project isn't a challenge. I said, fine, we'll do it. We got the economical viability study done again from an independent consultant, and we got it satisfied with the banker. Now, in this course of time, what happened? There's another large listed company in India, which is a retail firm, and I don't want to name it, and I'm sure you'll figure it out. They have a practice of having multiple SPVs. One of the SPV defaulted to the ex-financial creditor. Now, the financial creditor has invoked a corporate guarantee where this public sector bank, where I was dealing for corporate finance funding, was a primary lender to holding company. Now, the other B financial creditor invoked a CG, and it impacted A financial creditor on their investment. Now, apparently, real estate, we have a practice where when we, most of the real estate firms have a practice of floating a separate SPVs whenever we consider doing a project. This is just to isolate its cost and profit in a separate entity because of various reasons. Now, as a SPV does not lack the financial credentials, therefore the holding company tend to give a corporate guarantee to an SPV. So the SPV is enabled to raise fund from the market. So now, but the bank perceived it, there's a cross risk and we cannot consider this for funding. Now, after 7-8 months of exercise, the bank passed the transaction first time. Such a wonderful project, very promising location. We were very conservative in the entire business plan. Every due diligence report positive, but still bank did not consider funding. So what does it, the notify is, the bank is very cautious today, and they want to critically assess whether the borrower has the ability to repay my loan or no in the future. Like I was telling you about LRD, for example. Now, what if I do discounted receivables, but if tenants start engaging, negotiating on the lease price, what if they surrender your lease? How will you able to service my interest obligations? So this is a whole set of one side. Like I said earlier, there's a new set of forced NPAs are being created. post NBFC crisis. Now, this COVID has amplified the risk appetite of these lenders in the market. I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thanks, yeah. Thanks. It was useful.
Hi, Charu. I would also like to ask one question.
Yeah.
So, so actually, I was reading